chance. If I don't finish my year and get my degree, I am fucked. I am totally fucked.
Linda, we need
Yeah,
you, man.
Montana. I want to write my exams, get my degree, and then fuck off from this place so that I can go and support my family. Because without me, they are dead.
The observance of the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty can be traced back to 17 October 1987. On that day, over 100,000 people gathered at the Trocadero in Paris, where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed in 1948 to honor the victims of extreme poverty, violence, and hunger. They proclaimed that poverty is a violation of human rights and affirmed the need to come together to ensure that these rights are respected. Since then, people of all backgrounds, beliefs, and social origins have gathered every year on October 17th to renew their commitment and show their solidarity with the poor. Through Resolution 47/196, adoption of 22 December 1992, the UN General Assembly declared 17 October as the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty.
There are three ways a theater like ours is addressing poverty. The first is through productions. The second one is through partnership with independent producers. And number three is through infrastructure development. In terms of programs, we have a bevy of programs that we have since adopted to drive the programming of the institution. What we were doing, we were ensuring that we brand them and they become standalone strands that would be identified and iconic even to the public. If we say there is a Mandela Bay Jazz Legacy Festival, jazz lovers know already that this caters for them and they prepare. When we say Udaba Dance Festival, the same with the dance fraternity and the audiences. When we say Ipulo Drama Festival, it's the same. And we say Udumo Schools Arts Festival, the schools get ready and prepare for that. So we have developed these strands and we have Woina poetry and monologues sessions. The public knows and prepares and responds readily. We have decided to have this array of programs that sprawl across the year to ensure that there is a constant provision for income with the industry. However, that has challenges of its own, because with artists, we might blindfoldedly assume that we develop productions for ourselves and forget that it's a two-way. We develop productions for the consumption by the audiences. Now, is it our responsibility as the institution to test what do audiences want? And what about the practitioners? Shouldn't practitioners seek to know what do audiences want? Because you will find a scenario where we impose upon ourselves to accept and commission this production because an artist, for one reason or the other, has got to be commissioned, but the audience does not want the work. So this becomes a conundrum that we are faced with, which we have to ensure that we engage with the industry, and the industry and us knows, or the performers know, what the audiences want. However, we are very much committed in engaging the industry, work with it in ensuring that we produce works that the commercial value that the audiences will consume or the audiences would want to see. That needs lots of time and development, because where is the audience that we want to attract? It's largely middle class. It's sitting in front of television and it's probably not even watching SABC. It's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's on Showmax. Those are the people that we want to attract. It's on Zanzi Magic, right? So these are some of the issues that we have to deal with at a commercial level. And in order to sustain and provide for artists, there's got to be income, and we've got to ensure that we don't fund for the sake of funding. But with the government subsidy, it makes things easier because the majority of costs are absorbed by that, but it still imposes upon us all that there's got to be consumption of our productions. Two, in terms of independent producers, independent producers across the spectrum have worked their audiences and they provide for their audiences. They are not emotional about that. They do what sells. And once you have provided for them, there will be an array of jobs that are created concurrently in terms of state services and many other aspects, as well as income to the institution, which will ensure that we invest on development programs. Infrastructure. We have an 1892 property, and this 1892 property has not had an infrastructure maintenance plan, which we just are going to conclude. And the Department of Arts and Culture nationally has invested 36 million rand to that project, which will be unfolding over the next 7 months. That is going to create a lot of jobs for people who are not traditionally artists, but whom we hope that they will be able to plow back as audiences into the theater. However, the end product will ensure that the product, the institution is able to provide a feel-good factor and a good experience for audiences when we produce works with our artists as well as independent producers. But I should not put aside the fact that by the very nature of a transaction with human beings, hospitality is triggered immediately. So we provide lots of services towards small businesses in catering and in transport. So an experience to a theater is a number of things, through bar services, where we work with independent entrepreneurs. Also, it should be noted, we've got an array of printing that design, graphic design, as well as audio recording that we do. So we provide employment through an array of and contribute towards ending poverty through a number of streams as the institution. I would have made a mistake not to mention this, that as Mandela Bay Theatre Complex, we employ 28 staff members for administration, programs and production, marketing and HR. And these are your permanent jobs, and you can calculate how many people dependent on these people that we employ. So we really have a proper response as a zone that provides employment and works towards the alleviation of poverty.
I-UNESCO ikholelwa ukuthi ukulwisana nobubha kudinga ukuqiniswa kumuntu ngemfundo, ngesayensi nangomnotho. Lokhu kungumnyombo wokuqasheka okunokuzidla nesithunzi. I-UNESCO izigqaja ngokusebenzisa ubuchwepheshe bayo kwi-Agenda ka-2030 yokuthuthukisa okusimeme, kakhulu kwinhloso yokuqala ewukuqeda nanoma ibuphi ububa ezindaweni zonke.
Baba sembele kuwezulu ngehla moya ngehla
Another one's bread commissioned by the Center of Excellence in Food Security at the University of the Western Cape. This all-women four-hander dark comedy explores the themes of hunger and food security and their intersection with class, race, gender, and apartheid special legacies. Written during a writer's residency at the Robert Rauschenberg Estate in Florida in August 2017, the play had its first run at the After Theatre in Observatory, Cape Town in December 2017.
I'm Marlon LaRue. I'm from Artscape Theatre Centre. We have annually an Artscape Arts Ability Festival. It is important that we mainstream persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities, it's always last on the agenda. And it's important that a space like Artscape use the arts as a vehicle to empower, to give dignity back to artists with disabilities, patrons with disabilities. This is a space that is inclusive. It's including persons with disability. Why do we do this? It is important to employ persons with disabilities in order to give persons with disability dignity. To have a job is to create dignity, to create confidence. Hence, we also have a Schools Arts Festival that's including young persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities can't just be seen as a medical model. It should be seen that persons with disabilities' lives do matters. Artscape fully believe that persons with disabilities, their lives matter. As the facilitator of Artscape, I'm a proud woman with disabilities, and hence it's important that this space, the building, must be accessible from stages to jobs to every aspect of an institution should first prioritize the most vulnerable of society, and we as Artscape putting persons with disabilities first. This is a space that uses the arts as a vehicle to create inclusion, mainstreaming persons with disability. I am a woman with a disability, and I believe to eradicate poverty, to have a job is of utmost importance. Artscape's vision and our mandate is about creating jobs for persons with disabilities in an industry that was closed for persons with disabilities. We have an arts festival every year that features artists with disabilities. We have patrons that come in to see every single production because this building is accessible for all disabilities. We don't just believe in the medical model. We believe in emancipatory, in the inclusion on all levels for disabilities. Disability is about inclusion. Disability is about emancipation. Disability should be where we say as a nation, your life matters. And at Artscape, your life matters because it's about lights, it's about giving you the choice to be part of this wonderful place which we call Artscape.
The Dennis Hurley Centre is based in the heart of Durban, and we work with some of the poorest communities: homeless people, refugees, drug users, the urban poor, and the unemployed. And we're primarily there to provide basic life-saving services. We are feeding people, providing access to showers and laundry facilities, providing access to healthcare and life-saving medicines, and also giving people an opportunity to speak to social workers and so on. But it's interesting that the foundation stone of the Dennis Hurley Centre has a quote from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10. I've come that you may have life to the full. And so life to the full means it's not enough just to give people life-saving food and medicine, but also give people access to the arts. And that's why we really appreciate our link with the CCA and other artistic groups around Durban who work with us to ensure that the poorest people who come to the Dennis Hurley Centre also have access to and are inspired by dance, poetry, music, jazz, theatre, film, all the different arts. It's really wonderful to see how people respond when they're given an opportunity to act some form of art which is available, and to be inspired by it and excited by it like everyone else. It's important that they have access to that because it reinforces that the poor are not second-class citizens. They're entitled to the same goods in life as everyone else, and we need to make sure that we do make them accessible to them. It's also wonderful to see how through some of our work in the arts, we've been able to incorporate homeless people. For example, a recent event with Poetry Africa, where not only were the homeless able to listen to two wonderful poets, but also create their own poetry and be affirmed by being able to recite that and have it commented on by these great visiting poets. So that's just one example of the way in which we work with CCA and other artists to ensure that the glory of the arts are available to the poorest people in central Durban.
Umqondisi we-Centre for Creative Arts eNyuvesi yaKwaZulu-Natal uthi umsebenzi wale centre ungumgogodla wokuthuthukisa nokweseka ukulwa nobubha obungame umkhakha wezobuciko.
As a centre located within a public university institution, we are totally committed to serving the nation's development agenda. And in this regard, the Centre for Creative Arts works together with various levels of government to ensure that the issues of national development are addressed through our program, through our training, and through the various engagements that we have with various stakeholders from our communities. Key issues for us is to be able to build skills of particularly young people so that they become employable, and in this particular way we can address the issues of unemployment amongst young people. As long as young people continue to remain unemployed after graduation, we will not be addressing the high levels of unemployment and rising poverty in our country. So the Centre for Creative Arts, each year we identify about 12 young interns to whom we offer mentorship in the workspace, and hoping that at the end of that particular year, they will be able to have better chances of being engaged in the creative and cultural economies, and in that particular way, earn a living and be able to contribute to their families and to their own upliftment and growth in society. For us, imparting skills to young people is a significant part of our outputs for the year.
I-South African State Theatre idlala indima enkulu ekubeni inkundla eyeseka amalungelo abantu nentando yeningi emkhakheni wezobuciko ngezinhlelo zayo. I-South African State Theatre yabekwa ngaphansi komthetho owaziwa ngokuthi i-Cultural Institutions Act number 119 of 1998. Udokotela Sibongiseni Mkhize ongumqondisi jikelele we-South African State Theatre nomnumzane Aubrey Segabi bahlele ukulwisana nobubha ngezinhlelo zalesi sikhungo eziwumgogodla ukuthuthukisa wezobuciko eNingizimu Afrika.
Well, the minister's 10-point plan is based. The plan is based on outcome 14 of the National Development Plan, which is a blueprint that guides us, all of us, as national public entities of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and we have been operating in line with that plan. And the most important thing is that we are responsible for ensuring that the department achieves its objectives, especially the one of social cohesion, and ensuring that also there is eradication of poverty, in the sense that we need to contribute to economic development. As the arts, there are also other points within the plan that talk about, for example, the development of the national heritage route, the libraries, but also the most important thing is the culture of compliance and reporting within entities. So those are some of the aspects of the plan, but like I say, it's based on the National Development Plan and also Outcome 14 in ensuring that there is citizenry that participates in our democracy, but also that we've got a transformed and inclusive creative sector. So as the State Theatre, we are actually for example, they call us the agencies of the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and as an agency, it's our job to ensure that the minister's 10-point plan is delivered or implemented and achieved. And we do that through the kind of work that we put at the South African State Theatre. Well, at the moment, the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency is conducting the review. At this stage, one cannot say we know about the current state of the arts, except for the fact that we have been through a very difficult 2.5 years due to COVID. But even before COVID, there were concerns with regard to funding, the kind of support that our government is offering to the arts and culture sector. And I think one of the most important things that needs to be done is to profile the arts and culture sector prominently, so that when the president gives the State of the Nation address, he should actually be giving the state of the arts in the country, to say what's happening in the arts and culture and heritage sector, and that hasn't happened. So whenever there's a talk of the State of the Nation, it's mostly about the economy and job creation, but there is no focus on the arts and culture sector, which is actually dealing with the soul of the country. But also, we are also one of the main contributors to the growth of the economy. So I think it is important moving forward as we review after our 25 years and say, okay, where do we stand as the sector in terms of this new, because we are a new democracy. 30 years or 25 years is not that too long, but I think we need to position the arts appropriately so that our role is recognized. For example, we've got something, the South African Cultural Observatory, which enables us to have evidence-based information in terms of our contribution as a sector to the development of this country. Well, SEST as an institution of arts and culture will also be part of that. In fact, we have been attending and participating in the activities of the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, and we will be reviewed in terms of how far we have come in terms of eradicating poverty or using the arts or arts and culture to actually contribute to the achievement not only of the minister's 10-point plan, but also our National Development Plan, but also the United Nations Development Goals. Well, I think the most important thing to highlight is that the South African State Theatre adheres to the laws of the government of the country. And in April this year, the Department of Employment and Labor published its harassment code. So as the State Theatre, we have actually incorporated that code and tailor-made it for the State Theatre. So it's now part of our harassment code, which I think for the past month or two, we have been inducting staff. It is a very important code, and because it's based on inculcating a culture of professionalism, a culture of respect for one another, but also a culture of humanity, that we need to be human to one another, but also change the way we have been interacting with each other. So it's quite a very important code, and I'm very proud of the fact that we have it and that we have gone through a very thorough and rigorous process of inducting it, but also giving staff an opportunity to ask tough questions with regard to the implementation of that harassment code. Well, the most important thing is that we even before we had the harassment code, we did have the sexual harassment policy. We also have a code of conduct in respect of our staff, and I think people at the State Theatre are aware that I always maintain that during our staff meetings that our policies, they cover everyone within the premises of the State Theatre, be it staff members, contractors, or artists who are performing, so they are protected by the policies of the State Theatre. But we also do have an employee wellness program for our own employees, but also their families, and also the artists, when they are performing at the State Theatre, they can also benefit from that program that is provided by the State Theatre. But I think the most important thing is that as an institution, we must create an environment which is free of any form of harassment and bullying, and that is what we endeavor to do every day.
The Forgotten People photo exhibition by Sauda. Self-taught photographer Sauda Hlabo zooms in on the plight of impoverished native South Africans who are yet to taste the fruits of democracy in his latest exhibition, The Forgotten People, that was displayed at the South African State Theatre until the 29th of May 2022, following its launch on Sunday. His exhibit is in the people of Pumasilwe, an informal settlement in Tembisa, where he captures the dire conditions those awaiting freedom live.
It's a very beautiful question, right? And the answer to that is in two parts: access and information, right? What do I mean by access and information? Information is, what is it that artists need to know, especially the developing ones? And secondly, access, how do they get to the necessary information or the necessary hubs where they can find the help, right? So just a short intro, right? My name is Sauda. I'm a photographer based in Johannesburg. I started taking photography, the art, seriously about 2 years ago, right? Before that, I was still shooting with my mobile phone. And it was fun, but I never saw it as something that can bring me income or maybe take me out of poverty, the little poverty that I was in as an individual, right? So 2 years ago, at the brink of COVID, I decided, hey, let me see what can happen, right? So I bought a camera and I decided I'm gonna take this seriously. Right? So I began shooting, and I began sending my work to different places. Now, that's access control right there. That's access. I'm able to take photos and send it. Right? It's a privilege that a lot of people don't have, especially if you are in the homelands. Right? So I began doing that, and lo and behold, I sold my first work. Shocker. Right? My mind was blown. How can something that I captured, right, an image, bring me an income. It was a couple of thousands, which I unfortunately blew. I blew it in a matter of a week or so. I blew because I was having fun. So that's number one. So it is possible for art to be one of the pillars that can irradiate or alleviate people from poverty, right? Now, what more of a person who is in the deep KZNs, right, the deep Eastern Capes, how do they have access of technology for them to be able to take a picture, send their artwork to a gallery, and hope to get a review? How does he or she meet with other artists and discuss how to better themselves, right? And that's a problem there. Right? There has to be some sort of access for these people to meet or for these people to share their work. Right? So funding institutions, technology need to work hand in hand. Right? Now, secondly, the access to artists. Many developing artists, even myself, I haven't really met those big guys, those that I see on Instagram, right? Those who inspire me. And more than anything, artists need to find inspiration or to see inspiration from other artists. Right? If I see someone who I look up to within my arm's length, I'll begin to take my work seriously because then I can see the result very close. Right? It makes no sense to be an artist or a developing artist and seeing your aspirations on social media. It never works, right? At some point you lose motivation. At some point, at some point you give up on your art. Many a times that happened to me, I hit the wall until I began to socialize myself with certain people. Now, artists need to work together with funding institutions to create some sort of programs that can be moved from area to area. Right? We can have a program in Deep KZN, right, just to show our art and to inspire and educate other upcoming artists. We can have a program in the Eastern Cape, not necessarily funding to an individual artist. At some point, artists have to be selfless and say we're doing something for the art and for the betterment of the art.
Dancer and choreographer Mohlalefi Mokete's dance piece Ignorance explores different elements including poverty, forgiveness, happiness, and questions human ignorance. According to him, being selfish has become part of our lives and we can no longer help those who need help around us. The production showed at the South African State Theatre in March when it featured in the Theatre's Incubator Program, a program designed to accelerate the successful transition of semi-professional entrepreneurial artists through an array of business, technical, and artistic mentorship. Mr. President highlights the marginalized in society. As the country prepares for local government elections, Mr. President, a postmodern style theatre production, showed from the 5th to the 17th of October 2021 at the South African State Theatre, intends to become the voice for the voiceless, whose basic rights are and have been neglected for more than 25 years.
Hi, my name is Bongani Nicholas Komane. I'm a theatre maker and founder of Stage Visit Live Edutainment Show. My work is a public ethnographic work. It fights social injustices. So first of all, it does the in-depth field research. It critiques social structures and processes that lead to inequality and social injustices. It promotes active participation, whereby people are invited to critique the work and have their voices being added to the work. And further, it extends to the communities other than the community that the work is created for. In South Africa, I don't think that artists are getting funding enough. I think there's there's not enough funding for artists. As we can see, always when the funding from the government institutions like your DAC, like your NAC, and so on are out, there are always disputes. Artists are crying, few people are getting funding, same people are getting funding now and again. More funding is going to the white institutions. We see that the well-equipped institutions are the ones that are more privileged to get the funding, but not in the communities like your township and the previously disadvantaged areas. And we know that artists have difficulties in writing proposals and so on, but they always fall into that trap of getting funding because of their disadvantage of not writing good proposals. But then I think the cultural institutions should come together and try to, together with the communities, whether academic and non-academic communities, to close the gap between their positionality and their communication discrepancies. Sustainable work employment should be created, because most of the time we see that artists receive funding, but you'll find that they are receiving 50,000 for NAC. In that 50,000, more than 10 people have to benefit from that 50,000. Where do we think that they're gonna get sustainability in that kind of money? So if we can come together as artists, like what they're doing in the league, they've got sustainable thing that is going on every Hi, my name is Bongani Nicholas Komane. I'm a theater maker and founder of Stage Visit Live Edutainment Show. My work is a public ethnographic work. It fights social injustices. So first of all, it does the in-depth field research. It critiques social structures and processes that lead to inequality and social injustices. It promotes active participation, whereby people are invited to critique the work and have their voices being added to the work. And further, it extends to the communities other than the community that the work is created for. In South Africa, I don't think that artists are getting funding enough. I think there's not enough funding for artists. As we can see, always when the funding from the government institutions like your DAC, like your NAC, and so on are out, there are always disputes. Artists are crying, few people are getting funding, same people are getting funding now and again. More funding is going to the white institutions. We see that the well-equipped institutions are the ones that are more privileged to get the funding, but not in the communities like your township and the previously disadvantaged areas. And we know that artists have difficulties in writing proposals and so on, but they always fall into that trap of getting funding because of their disadvantage of not writing good proposals. But then I think the cultural institutions should come together and try to, together with the communities, whether academic and non-academic communities, to close the gap between their positionality and their communication discrepancies. Sustainable work employment should be created, because most of the time we see that artists receive funding, but you'll find that they are receiving 50,000 for NAC. In that 50,000, more than 10 people have to benefit from that 50,000. Where do we think that they're gonna get sustainability in that kind of money?
IMarikana umdlalo weshashalazi osivezela ngokusobala isihluku sokubulawa kwabasebenzi basezimayini abangama-31 ababulawa ngamaphoyisa belwela amalungelo abo ngonyaka ka-2012 befuna ukunyuselwa umholo inkampani iLawn Mill. Lo mdlalo usibonisa abasebenzi mgodini nemindeni yabo kanye nezimo abaphila phansi kwazo emva kwenhlekelele.
The 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, the way that we have integrated them in our policy, say for an example, in our artistic policy, is that our artistic policy is pro-access, and it's got various categories. I think we commission deserving artists. We co-produce, we work with different producers, those that don't have enough to create work, we come in and work with them. And recently, we started going into partnerships, with COVID-19 hitting us. You find that a lot of companies, a lot of producers cannot afford rentals like we've always had them. So we've gone into partnerships with them. And I think one of those 2030 sustainable goals is partnerships. We have to partner to be able to produce. So I think that's an important thing that we're doing with different companies, different artists, that is partnerships. And when you look at it in terms of programming, our programming is also very accessible. We ensure that most of our theaters are booked, whether through things that we produce or we co-produce or we partner, but we ensure that our theaters are working, because if the artists are not working, how do they then begin to alleviate poverty? So you want the artists to start working. And one of our key principles, really, one of the things that are on our annual performance plans that is key is job creation. We constantly create jobs, and as an arts institution, the moment we create those platforms, because then the artist can trade, it becomes possible, because that speaks to one of those goals of 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And one more thing about programming also, our program is quite diverse, but we have 4 festivals for dance, Kucheza Africa Festival, Youth Expressions, Vavasati International Festival, and this is also important because then we have to empower women. It makes provision for female creatives, whether it be composers, choreographers. We're trying to bring equality, but also we address issues of gender-based violence in most of the works that comes through that festival. Also just making sure that we can, in our program, we can have works that are in indigenous languages. So our programming is quite diverse, and we run 5 theaters, and we ensure that those theaters are always lit. We don't want them to be dark at one moment, and it's not easy to program 5 theaters, but we do our best because we create opportunities and give access to a whole lot of artists. Mentoring, this go as far back as 2004 when we launched 52 Seasons. It was a mentor prodigy program. Now we working with the Department of Arts and Culture, Sports Arts and Culture, to do the incubator program. It is a mentorship prodigy program as well. Those people that are being selected to be part of the incubator program, they've got mentors, but importantly also, they're not only focusing on the creative or on the art. If it's always a composer, it's not only focusing on composing music, but then you find that we're gonna be running workshops or master classes for IP, for an example, how to deal with text, how to brand yourself, how to create a brand and make it sustainable. So we thus provide all these other opportunities for young people, even established artists, so that they can grow, they can develop, they can create works for others. Because once you employ one artist, you're actually employing a whole lot of people. If you get one right and say, create this script, or director, make this script, choreographer, do this, you know, it's not just one person that you're empowering, you're empowering a whole community of artists. Oh, what productions have SAS done that deals with poverty? One of the productions that the South African State Theatre has done that addresses issues of poverty, it's Hungry, you know. And what was interesting in Hungry was that we went to the ground, you know, to speak to the people that are going through that. You know, we spoke to people that are begging on the streets. We're doing this production in collaboration with other theaters across the world. It was a project for Hunger for Trade, food security, and we went through Gauteng, you know, spoke to the beggars on the street, spoke to people that were planting and having vegetable gardens, you know, to sustain themselves. And I think that was an important program, but we also looked at what creates this poverty, why are people finding themselves in that situation, obviously unemployment, you know, and eventually pushes people into crime. We looked at that. It was actually an interesting piece. It had very mixed reviews, Hungry, but fortunately it was nominated 5 times for the Naledi Theatre Awards. And I think one of the nominations that was more comforting for us was the one for Best South African Script. Because look, it was seen through the eyes of this white guy who's a journalist, but it was really putting them in that world. Black people's life, you know, black people's lives are difficult. When you are seeing it from that point of view, I know one of the reviewers was saying it's all over the place, but it's dealing with so many issues. No, actually, our lives are very difficult. There's so many issues that affects the life of black people, and that's why there's so many high levels of poverty and all that. So it was coming from that point. So I was quite relieved when the production got Naledi Theatre Awards nods. But we've dealt with that production. We also made a short documentary about that. So we are dealing with works that look into issues like that of poverty. And I mean, as a South African State Theatre, we're always trying to address different issues, and poverty has been one of them. SAS's approach in its fight against poverty, really, it's more dependent on our programming and the programs that we run, because we artists, they need platforms to perform. That's the one way that they start working. We try and create employment, you know, whether it be part-time employment and all that, but we try and create employment. And if you look at South African State Theatre now, you know, most of the content that is on live goes online. And the content that goes online, I mean, it will outlive all of us, you know, and this content that is online, it's out for sale. So artists can begin to earn out of their intellectual property. That's one way of doing it. And we try and create as many jobs. I mean, you look, we do SAS Fringe, we will give artists an opportunity to present for a fee, but also for live sales and for virtual sales. So it is one way of really dealing with poverty, or trying to alleviate poverty through creating those opportunities for our artists. It's through music programs, it's through theater programs, the programs that we run, giving artists an opportunities to create work, because that's what the artists need. They need to create work. You need to give them a platform to create work and exhibit that way. Without that platform, they cannot earn a living. If they don't earn a living, the levels of poverty will keep on rising. So we do our bit in terms of trying to create employment. Sometimes we work with about 1,000 artists per annum. Sometimes that number is more, sometimes that number is less. But as just consistently, we try and do that. I mean, you look at it during COVID, I mean, consistently we put on work on our stages. We ensure that artists were earning a living. I mean, some of the work that had already been recorded, we were streaming it for free, but those artists that were in those works, they all got payment for that. So we try by all means to ensure that artists can live out of their intellectual property, and artists are not exploited at SAS, and we try by all means to create programs for them to profile their works.
We want management to come here and speak to us.
Made up of boulders to the size of spaceships. On the size of a boss's mansion. Minus all your leader can please step forward. Well, no one is going to shoot at you. We are here now.
Let's go there so that we can see them.